All right, what's up, everybody? I am Zach. Wow, I am Zach. We are back here at the Zach Clark Show. A little late night for me last night, but I am here with my friend and colleague, Mike Giresi, who is the Chief Clinical Officer at Family First. And what's the new?
Yeah, Roots Renewal Ranch.
Roots. So you're doing boys and girls now.
Yeah, boys in Florida, girls in Texas. It's pretty incredible.
I'm pumped for this conversation. Mike is someone I've gotten to know a little bit better recently. He does a lot of work in trauma and a lot of work in teens. So that's what we're going to kind of jump into. But before we do that, Mike, what's up, man? You've been in New York for a few days. How you feeling?
Good. We did this whole Northeast tour thing, and I'm a little tired, but I'm excited to be here with you.
I go back and forth. So we both work in behavioral healthcare. We've both been doing it a long time. We both know a shitload of people.
Yes.
So you set up these trips where you're seeing 100 people in 3 days, and it's go, go, go. I mean, it's exhausting.
It's totally exhausting. I'm the worst with names too. I'm constantly offending people that I've already met and, saying hi to for the first time, but it's actually not the first time and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I get it. I mean, I think we're both at the point now. We were talking before. I'm 41. I think you're 34, right? Yeah. So like, we're not, young bucks trying to cut our teeth anymore. We do know some people, and I think we can forgive ourselves a little bit if we forget meeting someone.
It's a good reminder.
So the hook on this episode, again, is going to be a lot of talk about trauma, a lot of talk about teens and the relationship between parents and their kids. Mike's been doing this work for a very long time. He's got thousands and thousands of hours of case studies, and we're going to get into that. But before we do, Mike, we've walked this path together, as many of us do.
Yeah.
When you're sober, right? So, yeah.
Yeah. 12 years on October 5th.
Amazing.
Yeah.
It's so good, dude.
Incredible.
That's so good. And did you ever think when you were... I know a little bit of your story. As you can see, Mike is a very strong human. He was a good football player, right? I mean, like that was your...
I was overrated, but yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Mike's a high achiever. So you went... Give me the quick football story, because that was a part of your story, right? I mean, that was...
Yeah. It really consumed my life in my teenage years. It probably provided like the necessary structure and discipline that I needed to not go off the rails like I did after football ended in college. But I excelled in high school, ended up playing in the high school All-American game my senior year, alongside like all these really cool guys that did like amazing things. Like our backup quarterback for the All-American game was Geno Smith.
No way.
Just
played Monday night.
It's unbelievable to watch him. It's so cool to see how much success he's had. The keeping in touch with some of those guys over the years has been cool. Even helping some of those guys get into recovery has been really cool. And then signing out of high school, I signed my national letter of intent to play at Villanova. Lasted like maybe a week and a half in summer training camp.
At Villanova. You showed up there, yeah.
And completely blew out of it. I was having panic attacks. I'd never had panic attacks before. There was a bunch of stuff going on in my family at the time, and I just had no ability to cope with it outside of the resources that I had at home, where everybody knew me and I knew everybody, and I could go to certain places and receive, the resources that I really needed. So
you were kind of a local legend, right? I mean, I would assume, you were playing at a high level. You go to Villanova, you're for the first time in your life on your own.
I was, I grew up in Westerville, Ohio.
Right. Where the hell is Westerville, Ohio?
Exactly. Go Buckeyes. But I called my mom, and I said, I can't do this. I went home. I was miserable. I sat out the first semester of college, watching all of my buddies play on ESPN and all of that kind of stuff. That year, Villanova won the national championship for 1AA. Which I was so excited for them, for Coach Talley and all the guys. And But you know, the demoralization and the depression and the self-hatred, and it compounded. At that time, I was drinking a ton, just sitting in my basement, isolating. All my friends, even outside of football, were all off at school and they were doing their thing. And I was back in Westerville, and
do you remember, like, so you're just backtracking, like double clicking on that a little bit. You're in your basement drinking. Like, do you, like, when you were like growing up in Westerville, Ohio, at what age do you have your first drink, or at what age do you kind of start to dabble?
This is probably the should have been my first sign of alcoholism. I did everything in extremes. So my first drink was the football guys on the high school team brought me upstairs at a party. My neighbor, this girl that was like my sister, handed me off to them and said, "Take care of him, make sure he doesn't get into trouble." And they immediately brought me upstairs and did a beer bong.
Yeah, famous last words.
Yeah. And then the first time smoking weed was very shortly after. I was like a freshman in high school. And that was a gravity bong. So I got ripped. I thought I was the couch kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And and I dabbled. You know, I drank socially in high school and smoked some weed. And toward the end, with injuries and stuff like that, I started dabbling in pills and opiates and stuff like that. That's what ended up being my real jam, was opiates.
Yeah.
I ended up, my second semester of college, I transferred to Miami of Ohio and joined the team there. And then got all the way through two-a-days, got hurt my lower back. I could barely walk at times.
That's a good program, right? Ben Roth. That's a good program. Yeah.
Yeah. They won the MAC that year.
You would show up places, and then did you leave? Did you stay on the team?
So the week before we were going to go game one, we were going to travel down and play the Gators at the Swamp. And I turned in my jersey. I wanted to get drunk. I wanted to stop feeling what I was feeling, both physical pain, and I had no, in my family and culturally in Westerville, and then otherwise, we never talked about like feelings or emotions, or I had no self-understanding. Everything was on the surface. Had no depth of relating to the world or myself. And I was just miserable. And I didn't really know it consciously. I just knew that I didn't feel good, and that drinking and doing drugs was going to make me feel good.
This is interesting because I just got back from, I was down at LSU. And one of the things I always say to the college age kid is, you have permission to be curious about who you are, what you want to do, who you want to be. Because I think a lot of people, like for me, for example, like, I knew my dad liked baseball. I knew he wanted me to play baseball. I fell out of love with baseball, at some point. Like, I didn't actually want to keep doing it, but I did. And so I say that because and then as like from a career standpoint, I kind of did the thing that my dad suggested I do. And had I not gotten sober, I think I would have just kept following what I thought other people wanted me to be. So did you love football, or were you just good at it?
I definitely fell out of love with it.
Yeah.
I very much relate to what you just said. I did this one therapy session a number of years ago, and I was talking about, I love how you mixed in the career stuff with it, because there's such a parallel process where I was basically talking about how much pressure I was putting on myself at work, and how I was, I kept saying yes when I really wanted to say no. I just kept putting things on my plate, and I was just talking about how I want to stop doing this to myself, but I didn't know how. It felt like automatic almost. And my therapist brought up this story, and he said, I'm reminded of a story that you told me one time where your dad, my dad, when we were playing baseball growing up, he used to stand at the fence right behind home plate and have his hands up on the fence and look us right in the eye as we were pitching. And my older brother was a way better baseball player than I ever was.
Okay.
And what he talked about, my therapist, what he brought up was, he was like, "You remember telling me this?" I said, "Yeah." And he said, "I was just putting myself in your shoes as like an 11-year-old little boy, as you're walking up to the mound, and how much pressure you would have to put on yourself to be able to throw a ball better than an 11-year-old could throw a baseball. Because every pitch, if it was a good pitch, it was a triumphant, sign from dad. If it wasn't, it was disappointment or even aggression." And he said, in order to be, to get what you needed from your dad, you needed to put all this pressure on yourself. Immediately, I just start sobbing.
Yeah. Oh.
And he said he did the whole therapist thing, right? He said, "I noticed there's emotions coming up for you," or whatever. And I said, "Yeah, no shit." He said, "Do you have a sense for what the emotion is?" I said, "This feels really big. I feel incredibly sad. This feels like a ton of grief almost." And he said, "How is it to let yourself feel some of that grief?" And I said, "This feels gross." I started going like this. "This feels gross. I don't want to feel this." And he said something I'll never forget for the rest of my life. He said, "I imagine this does feel gross. I think it's going to be important for you to remember that you're not the one that made this gross." Again, just sobbing. And, those experiences, both in therapy, the experiences that I had in early recovery of being introduced to a way of life that's not just centered around me, but rooted in helping others, is like this path that both it's incredibly cool, right? Like that we get to, as we learn more about ourselves and like reconnect with these different things that we split off from and disconnected from, as we start saying no when we really mean it.
It's the hardest. I mean, that's what jarred me, dude. When you were, look, you get to know someone, you think there's some similarities. It's why you start to like each other, as friends. But you're talking about this idea of not being able to say no, and I always talk with my therapist about this contract I have with the world, because I feel like I've been saved. Like I should have died. I was a heroin addict. I have this contract with the world where I have to say yes to everything. Like, God forbid I say no, because that means I'm like not honoring this life that I've been given, or whatever it is, or this relationship with my parents who saved my life, or however you want to talk about it. It's crazy.
Yeah, I so relate. What's funny is like a mentor of mine used to say this all the time. You can tear down a house with the same tools you built it with. That so much of what I've learned in recovery and so much of what I've learned to kind of move forward in life, sometimes those same things, like my desire to be helpful, the feeling compelled to be of service to other people, those same things that bring me so much freedom and gratitude can be twisted ever so slightly and be the exact things that lead me to self-sabotage and self-judgment and self-criticism and being just overworked and exhausted. And then I'm not a service to anyone or myself or anything in between.
Well, I think for me, you talk about your dad. I mean, my dad, I love my dad.
You and me both?
What?
You and me both?
Yeah.
I love my dad.
So it's hard.
Yeah.
To say like a lot of, and I'm like getting a little misty right now. Like I just didn't want to let him down.
Yeah.
So as I moved through life, I took on this, then I didn't want to let anyone down.
Yeah.
And so in management and leadership, that becomes impossible, because you're always going to let someone down.
Yeah. Well, especially when, I love the topic of leadership as like another kind of portal into self-discovery and awareness, because so much of what I've experienced with leadership is that people aren't experiencing you for you. They're experiencing you through their own projections of how they relate to authority and leadership and all of that. And to field, it goes in one of two directions. It's either in this kind of like thing that might feel really good around, in psychotherapy or psychology, we call it, from an object relations perspective, we call it becoming the rewarding object. That they tell you how great you are and how wonderful you've been to them and how impactful, the speech that you did on stage was. And that stuff can feel really, really good. But the trick is that the way that they're relating to you has absolutely they don't know who you are. Mm-hmm. And so everything that they're saying is being filtered through their own projections. How to not take those on and make them about you is really difficult on the good feeling end. When people make you into the rejecting object, that's also really difficult, to not take ownership for me telling you that I can't do something, or me confronting you about something, or holding you accountable for something isn't me judging or criticizing or rejecting you. It's me treating you as an adult and holding you to a certain standard that you agreed to. But when people take that, and what they do with it is they tell themselves that you hate them, that you don't like them.
Yeah, they blame you.
They blame you.
And you can't control, I can't control that narrative.
Yeah.
Which is the fear.
Yeah, not taking responsibility for what they do with what you say is one of the biggest challenges. Not taking
responsibility for what they do with what you say. I mean, that's it right there. I mean, for me, that's the Mount Everest of leadership. That's the Mount Everest of living.
I couldn't agree more. The mentor of mine, Larry Heller, I did a consultation with him one time, and I was working with some really challenging dynamics in this family, and I was concerned about how to navigate some of the confrontation that I was anticipating was going to happen in a particular therapy session, and I was really nervous about it and all this stuff. And I'll never forget it. He said, "This is going to sound weird to you, Mike, but you're going to need to find a place inside of yourself that doesn't give a shit what they do with what you say." And at the moment, I was like, yeah, no, that sounds weird. That doesn't make any sense to me at all. What do you mean? And he goes, because from that place, you can actually care because it's no longer about you.
Wow. Dude, that alone makes it, I mean, if people listen, I mean,
change my life.
That's a wrap. That's a wrap. I mean, that's it. That's the juice. That's the juice. And I always get jealous of people that I see, and like you were talking about, I never know what's going on, but between the sheets, I never know what's going on at home for someone. But I get jealous of these people that I feel like I used to always get jealous at my friends, my buddies growing up that could go out and sleep around. Mm-hmm. I could never do it. I'm way too sensitive. I get way too attached. I couldn't having sex with two girls in the same month as a college kid even was mind bending for me. But I had friends that could go out and Monday through Friday, 5 different girls and I'd be like, what is that? You're not but they got to a place where they're just they were probably communicating well, or they weren't. But I would have to assume maybe they were communicating well. Maybe they were saying hey, this is just what this is. And it allowed them to kind of not get attached. I don't know if that makes sense, but
it makes perfect sense to me. I remember waking up at 30 and realizing that I had in personal romantic relationships, I had absolutely no idea what I liked and what I didn't like. And as that awareness kind of came to me, I was like, okay, why the hell don't I know this? And what I discovered was that I was so concerned and focused every single time in every single relationship on whether or not they liked me.
Yeah.
That I had never even taken a moment to consider whether I like them, and ended up in all these different relationships that I didn't want to be in. solely because I was so petrified of being rejected, or so petrified. I needed this validation for them to like me, for me to feel okay.
Oh. So you're already sounding smart. I want to make you sound really smart, because your work is a testament to some of your lived experience, some of our shared experience. Just real quick, just to blitz through it so I can give the listeners a good understanding of who you are, because I love the story, you know? So you go to Villanova, you go to Ohio, you turn your jersey in, you're 20 years. So you get sober at 22, you're 20 then. The next 2 years is just insanity?
Yeah. I joined a fraternity.
You turned the jersey in, but you stayed on campus.
Stayed on campus, joined a fraternity, party all day, all night. It's 40 guys in 40 rooms. It was pure madness. Yeah. And I say that, and there are guys that totally did it successfully, went to class, like had graduated, went forward in life. I totally didn't. Yeah. I got super hooked onto opiates, spiraled out of control. Went home summer going into I think it was like
2010, 2011.
Yeah, 2010, 2011.
So the Oxycontin thing was like kind of phasing out, right? Like the heyday of Oxycontin was like 08 or not.
I remember when they did the mandate for actually the tracking system. Yeah. And all the pill mill stuff. I was paying for people to go down and like doctor shop in Florida and come back up, and
you were getting,
oh yeah, I was deep. And very quickly, once that stuff dried up, got into heroin.
Do you remember the first time, do you remember how you found out about heroin?
Yeah, I remember it vividly.
Yeah, tell me. 'Cause I learned about heroin in rehab.
My dope dealer, I went to him for pills, and he literally just said, "Hey man, I'm out, but I have this stuff." And it was in a tinfoil wrapping, and he opened it up.
Not even the wax bag,
tinfoil wrapping, opened it up and said, "Actually, it's a ton cheaper. I can give you this much, which is equal to this." And without a second thought, I did it. And at the time I was snorting it and smoking it. And then that led me to my first rehab. That's when my mom sent me down to Florida to stay with my dad. My dad very quickly assessed what was going on, and
with his hands on the fence, watching every pitch,
very quickly called me on my stuff. And that's when I went into treatment for the first time. And, at the time I could concede to the idea that socially doing heroin is not cool. Right. That that's not something I should probably be engaging in. But to consider myself an addict or an alcoholic, that just wasn't a thing. But the same thing that you were talking about earlier, just kind of figuring out what everybody wants from me and just doing that to stay safe, not doing any of it authentically. That's really what early recovery that first time was. Ended up going to sober living afterwards, stayed there for 6 months. After treatment, got out, got my apartment.
This is in Florida.
This is all in South Florida. And went out on a date. She ordered a glass of wine. So I ordered a glass of wine without even a second thought. And nothing happened. Finished the night. It was great. Woke up the next morning. I was working at a gym. Went to work. Within the week, I was crying in the middle of the night on my way to the dope hole that I had driven past on my way to work every day. And because I needed to get high. That whole story is ridiculous, but ended up copping drugs, and
within a week of that innocent glass of wine.
Within a week.
And that's the thing that I think people, we could have a whole episode about this, but the whole, the obsession, the allergy, the disease model, all of these things, we spend so much time talking about them, but for me, I know, this is why I'm careful whether they're cooking with alcohol, because I know if that part of my brain gets activated, for me, it's not the glass of wine that I want.
Yeah.
it's
that part got hammered for me through this experience. I'm so grateful for that experience now, right? Because without a shadow of a doubt, I know that that's where this leads. That spiraled, it's like all the things that first treatment experience gave to me were all like these planted seeds that I didn't believe in what they were saying about me. And then it all came true.
Yeah.
And it spiraled way, way, way out of control. I ended up shooting dope. I went on a run that was probably 6 to 9 months.
Dude, this is my story, man. I went to treatment the first time, and then my next run was 6 to 9 months, and my second run was the first time I did heroin, but it started with like I woke up and I had this idea that I was going to drink, and I did, and then I was at the street corner buying dope 6 hours later.
Yeah, man. I'm
getting a phone call. You're good. Grace, you want to grab it and just silent it? Thank you. Thank you, Grace. Grace is in the house.
Thank you, Grace. Yeah, I mean, in looking back, I got Baker acted, which down in Florida is involuntary hospitalization because I was beyond suicidal. Tried to overdose multiple times in one day. The slashes on my neck, on my wrist. I was 130 pounds soaking wet. It was pure darkness, completely broken. And I was shipped up to a program from there that was not like my first program. The first program was nice and bougie.
Yeah.
The second program was a bit tougher. There was 150 guys, 140 of which were all prison reentry, court-ordered diversion type program. And I was there on my insurance and private pay for a few months. And it was tough. And
where was it? What state?
It was in Florida. It was just north of Ocala. And
unbelievable.
I was really motivated to get out of the treatment center every day and go to the noon meeting that they would bring us to in town, Happy, Joyous, and Free, my home group. And I'll never forget it. I walked out of the treatment van, shaking, broken, miserable. And this woman came up to me and gave me a hug and said, "Welcome home." And I'm getting a little emotional just talking about it. And I fell in love with 12-step recovery. There were all these guys that were all laughing outside that had these really cool lives. They were married, they had businesses, and I learned about that sometimes in meetings, but most of the time outside of the meetings. But in the meetings, they were telling my story over and over and over again about how they were just, there was a guy who used to talk about being sufficiently horrified by his alcoholism. And that just hit me so deeply.
Yeah.
These guys knew what I had experienced, and yet they were laughing and they had these cool lives. And I really wanted to know how they got there. And they took me under their wing, and they were kind to me when I didn't think I deserved it, and it changed my life. I fell in love with being of service to other people, like they were of service to me.
It's unbelievable.
And that's what launched. There's this guy, William James, who wrote the Varieties of Religious Experiences, and had a big impact on Alcoholics Anonymous. And he has this line in Varieties of Religious Experiences. He studied spiritual awakenings around the world. That was his life's work. And he said, all of them look completely unique. He said, except for the fact that every single one of them that he ever came in contact with shared two commonalities. The first commonality being devastation, alcoholic bottom, near-death experience, trauma, so on and so forth. And then the second commonality is, once having had this awakening, the inability to contain it. meaning I have to tell people about this. It's not a choice, you know, in the 12th step, there's a promise about carrying the message to other alcoholics. It's not for those of us who have had this experience of awakening spiritually to what this all is really about. My experience is that it's not so much a choice as much as I'm compelled. I have to tell you about this. And that, you know, that kind of energy that I experienced in early recovery really propelled me in the direction of, I really wanted to get, you know, my first job in the field was as a tech at a treatment center. And then all these like really good people came around me to like help me understand what this was. They introduced me to trauma work, which I'm deeply passionate about. I think trauma work's probably the sneakiest form of getting somebody into spirituality.
I want to double click on that, and I want to zoom in on your career and what you're doing now. The thing that's coming up for me is, as I mentioned, we just spent some time visiting some colleges, and we were doing that with Emmett Smith, and we were with a bunch of...
So cool.
Yeah, it was awesome, dude. It was, this guy's, he's the best. And we were in a room full of what they called student leaders. So it was basically the heads of all the fraternities. Like they're just trying, like, you know, like they're just trying to wrangle their brothers.
I know those guys. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, you probably were one of those guys. And they asked him about leadership, and Emmett said, like, the number one leadership quality is love. He's like, if you're able to love people, you are then giving them an opportunity to see something. You're basically telling them, like, I see something in you that you don't even see in yourself yet.
It's beautiful.
And that's what, like, those early treatment jobs and those early people in recovery, I feel like that's what they do for us.
Yeah.
Like, I was convinced I was unlovable. That girl gives you the hug getting out of that van. It's like, holy shit. I felt something for the first time in a long time. And then these guys that kind of, you know, in our early careers believe in us is huge. So you start working in the field, you're a tech. Let's go to today, because you've been doing this work for, I guess, a decade. Is that, yeah. 10 years. You're the chief clinical officer at Family First. Family First treats teens, 13 to 18. They now do women and men. It's an amazing program. I've seen unbelievable outcomes. We've hired some people from Family First. Like, I have nothing but glorious things to say about it. I want to start with Paris Hilton.
Yeah.
So Paris Hilton, I mean, this must have been, 5 years ago now, or is it 10 years ago?
Yeah, a handful of years ago. She
shared her experience of being thrown into a
myriad of different teen treatment experiences that were just unbelievably abusive.
And so on the heels of that, thank you, Paris, for speaking up.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about, because a lot of our listeners are parents. A lot of our listeners come here for hope, for guidance on what to do with their kids. Why does what you do work, and why does what you do feel ethical to you and the team? And go against kind of some of the issues that Paris experienced?
Well, I think contextually it's important to name that there are really, really good teen treatment providers that have always been around. And yet the prevailing approach for way too long about how to treat teens was essentially to dominate them into a state of behavioral compliance with environmental standards. One of the biggest difficulties of that is that it works. You absolutely can strip a kid of all of their dignity and dominate them into doing and saying exactly what you want them to do and say. Now, the heartbreaking part, right, is that for any of us that this should be obvious, this should have been obvious for a long time, is that while on the surface of things it might look better because they're doing and saying what you want them to do and say, underneath the surface, all of the seething rage and heartbreak that was causing all of the issues in their lives in the first place get reinforced. And as all of that compliance is just shoving all of that stuff down, as soon as these kids would get out of their treatment experiences and go home or to the next spot, it couldn't help but be acted out onto the environment or back at themselves through self-harm and suicide and addiction. And these are the stories that we're hearing. And I think it's really, really important that we, as an industry, listen to the people that are telling their subjective experience of how inhumane and undignified their treatment experience was. The Family First was founded with the principal idea that we were going to be the complete opposite of all of that, that we were going to provide a compassionate, humane and dignified experience for kids. And some of that goes into the realm of there is no system of rewards and consequences with kids. I'm not concerned so much with them doing or saying what I want them to do or say. I want to know what they authentically want to do and what they authentically want to say. And the moment I come with some kind of goal or agenda or solution environmentally about what I think they should be doing, immediately it triggers this compliance defiance dilemma where they're just going to be responding to me about in complying to look good or defying to somehow gain some kind of false independence from the environment. The strategy of that for them, unconsciously most often, is that if they can just continue complying or defying the environment, they never have to take a look at what's authentic for them, what they authentically think and feel and what they want and what they desire and what they believe. Why does that happen that way? Well, from a developmental trauma perspective, is they learned at some point in their lives that to be connected to themselves, to be connected to what it is that they most authentically think, feel, believe, and want, desire for their lives was way too threatening. And so what they learned to do was to shut down and disconnect from what's most authentic. And
is that where the substances and the acting out and
then all of the adaptations that they make, the ones that you and I've already actually named, which is instead of connecting, staying with what it is that I most want for myself, I disconnect from that and I adapt by figuring out what everybody wants from me.
Right.
And I do that so that I can stay safe and be good. Those strategies, as long as they remain intact, all of the skills and all of the things that we want to help and teach and guide them through, they're never going to work. Because all of those strategies are rooted in shame and guilt and self-criticism and self-hatred. A kid coming in who doesn't believe that they deserve to authentically express themselves and move towards what
because
it is
of how they were
want.
parented or because of how they were, what coaches like. I guess it could be a variety of different.
It's really, really complex. It obviously has to do with caregiving, with parents, but it's even larger than that, right? It has to do with the fact that, we're growing up, these kids are growing up in a culture and in communities that are more disconnected than ever.
Right.
This kind of trickle down effect of how parents just do not get the necessary support and resources to meet the billions of different needs that their kids have all day long. All of that environmental failure from a cultural perspective that trickles down into communities, that trickles down into households, that impacts parents, and then kids end up being the receptacles of all of this environmental failure. And the main concept of complex developmental trauma is that young kids can't understand that they can be a good kid in a bad situation. Therefore, what ends up happening is that because to experience your environment, the only thing that's in charge of your survival as failing you is way too threatening. So what do they do to protect themselves against that threat? They make that failure about themselves. If I'm bad, the environment in which my life depends on can be good. that tends not to be like a one-off event, but rather the air that kids are breathing day after day, week after week, month after month. And in early childhood development, it gets wired in their brain and their nervous system and goes to the root of who they think they are. This is why, when clients come into our programs in our offices, they don't say things like, Zach, I recognize that I have this pattern, right, of kind of every time I feel angry, I start to judge myself for being angry and tell myself that I'm too much and that I don't, this is, anger is not welcome here and I'm not allowed to feel angry. No, what do they say? They say, me? Oh, no, I'm not angry. I'm not an angry person.
Right.
There's no such thing as not an angry person. What this person is telling me is that at a certain point in their life, they learned that to be connected to their anger was too costly. And so they learned to shut down and disconnect from their healthy anger in favor of adapting to what was available to them in their environment rather than what
And they probably ended up in that seat because of things they were doing that displayed itself as anger to the world. I mean, they were probably acting out, right? They were probably... or shutting down to a place where they just, because we see that too, right? Like we see the teen, we see the kids that just go mute, say nothing.
Yeah.
Parents, and they'll just headphones on, head down. I don't even know you. Are you my mom? I don't, kind of thing.
From my perspective, all acting out behavior comes first from acting in on themselves. There's no kid that's raging externally that isn't absolutely eviscerating themselves internally beforehand.
Oh. And as adults, I mean, I get it. So,
well, going back a little bit to what you were asking about, like how do you set up a humane, dignified treatment program?
Well, how does it start? Because here's the thing, and I want to get there, but we get calls here, and for years, like we would do the family meeting and try to help the adolescent, client or patient get to treatment. And I did some of these, and I was actually, I feel like, pretty good. And it was a lot based on my own personal experience and kind of trying to be the opposite of the, for lack of a better word, the goon, right? Like the guy who's coming in the middle of the night. However, and we've kind of moved away from that because we've grown so much, and we just like we know what we know and we do what we do. There's a call we get though, or that you get, or that your friends get that do this work that are out in the field. That is the 14-year-old kid that is clearly a harm to himself. If there is not a significant intervention, he might die or she might die. Now, I don't know where the line gets like drawn in terms of like when you go in and grab that kid and say you need to be in a program, or if that is just too traumatic that you never do that. I guess I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that, if that makes sense. It was a long way of asking, like if a kid is in danger, do you take measures that are going to seem a little bit more aggressive to get them into a program?
Yeah, my experience is that, and for good reason in many cases, when parents call us and ask us these questions, more often than not, what's happening is that they're petrified of their kids, mm-hmm. and they don't want to rupture the relationship that they have with their kids, even more than it already has been ruptured. They're afraid of, on the more kind of subtle end, they might even just be afraid of confronting their kids. They might be really afraid of calling out what's happening because on some level they blame themselves. The question is how can you, again, in a compassionate, dignified, and humane way, how can you set up to address things openly with your kid that doesn't involve completely stripping away all of their agency and their ability to actually understand and buy into what's happening. Now, when there's, incredible, like, immediate threats to physical safety, this is where it gets challenging. Having to call the authorities, get the cops to the house, having to, in Florida, Baker Act your son or your daughter to the hospital. These are really, really extreme measures that shouldn't be, that the decision shouldn't be made lightly. Those things can be incredibly traumatic. But the measuring stick for me is if what we can reasonably anticipate, and this has to be in collaboration with a trained professional, we can say that what's about to happen is going to lead to something far more traumatic than the trauma of involuntarily hospitalizing them.
It's the hardest decision.
It's the hardest decision ever. That's the measuring stick. And I say it needs to be done in collaboration with a trained professional, because trained professionals are able to discern whether this is an emotional threat or whether this is a physical threat so much more clearly than a parent who is just doing the best that they can to navigate a situation that feels impossible.
The reason I ask, Mike, is because at Release, we basically start treating folks at 18.
Yeah.
So if they leave your care, they're now into our care. So we'll get 25, 26, 29-year-old, 35-year-old, and they are still 15 years later hung up on my parents decided to wake me up in the middle of the night and rip me out of my bed and send me to a wilderness program. And because of that, I hate them and I will never forgive them. And I'm only here because I don't have any other options.
Yeah.
And so when I hear that,
I hear
Paris Hilton, but I also know that there are situations where it's the only option.
Yeah. I mean, again, that kind of an extreme option, I think what I have a problem with more than anything
talk to me. Like,
else,
I want to know how, as an industry, we heal and we treat our kids better.
I think it has to do with listening to their experiences and understanding where we've fallen short. The taking responsibility for what we can and trying to do things differently. And one of the things that I think we need to recognize is that there are way too many kids that was the first recommendation. It wasn't to go to therapy. It wasn't to sit down and have a talk as a family with guided support. It was, oh, you're afraid of your kid and what he's doing? You need to hire these people to snatch him in the middle of the night and send him to the woods. That, in my opinion, is grossly negligent and absolutely unacceptable. If you haven't attempted to have a conversation with your kid about what's going on, and your first move is to do that, my experience is that that's not coming from parents. Parents are just being guided, or I should say misguided, by professionals that are making recommendations to do that.
Well, that's a big problem in our field too, is a lot of these folks. And I have to be honest about my experiences. I was 6 months sober when I started working in behavioral health care. So I probably made a lot of mistakes early on.
Of course.
I now feel like I am qualified to handle really any level of call and know what I know and know what I don't know, more importantly. But there's a lot of young men and women that get into this work and they clock a couple years and they sponsor someone or they help a friend get into treatment, and then all of a sudden they say, I can do this. And they start doing this work and they end up doing more harm than good.
Yeah, I mean, there was a cookie cutter kind of set of recommendations for years. And again, if you go on all of the posts online and you read the articles and you hear the stories, that they're riddled with these kinds of things, is that it was the cookie cutter recommendation was to get a transport team to take a kid out to a wilderness program There's very little to no contact with the kid and their family during the treatment process. The only communication that they're having is with the parents. There might be a family week or weekend towards the end of treatment, which the kid is then incentivized to try and look like they're doing good, which makes it look like the program actually was effective, even though they're just complying to get out of there and get back to safety. There wasn't actually anything meaningful in terms of a shift of how they relate to themselves or the world. And then because it looked like the treatment experience was effective, they trust the people that were recommending it in the first place. And then the people recommending it in the first place then recommend them to go to a long-term extended therapeutic boarding school. And then that therapeutic boarding school ends up being a place where all of that seething rage and heartbreak gets projected out onto the environment or back at themselves. And historically speaking, how people related to that was, oh, whose fault is that? The kid. He needs to go back to wilderness and then back through. And kids weren't going home for years.
Right.
And they were displaced.
I've met them.
You and me both. Horror stories.
And so like the whistle was blown when some of these people grew up.
Yeah.
Like they kind of looked back at their life and they're like, that was fucked up. Like that was crazy.
Yeah. And I think what gets confusing for people, and one of the things that gets confusing for people is that that doesn't mean that there weren't meaningful experiences. It doesn't mean that there weren't transformative experiences. That doesn't mean that there weren't people who really greatly benefited from those treatment experiences. Of course.
I mean, look, I always say like, when a family calls me, I say, look, you can get well, you can get sober with $2 and a big book by going to AA.
That's right.
You can get sober by going to CrossFit. You can get well by becoming a marathon runner. Like there's a lot of different ways to do this. And so some of these, in your face kind of, yes, therapeutic, behavior mod programs have had some successful results. I mean, every program, I would hope, if they've done anything, has had some successes, but I want to pivot to Family First and to the work you guys are doing and how that is being guided by kind of the trauma background you have, because I think there's a lot of things that we're talking about today. One is like our own shared experience. Two is how we need to treat our kids better.
Yeah.
And a lot of times what I'm hearing you say is that as parents, our behaviors are being, I'm not a parent, but behaviors are being fueled by fear. You're just terrified, which is okay. You need to hear that. And three, that there's, options available like Family First that take a little bit of a different approach and I think work with the whole family system.
Yeah, it's critical. From my perspective, the treatment with an adolescent doesn't exist without treatment with the entire family system. Backtracking just a moment to speaking to the parent dynamic, there was an old Buddhist mindfulness teacher that I loved.
You went hard on the Buddhism for a minute, didn't you?
I did. Yeah, I was a little aggressive. Yeah, I went to India, I did the whole thing.
We love that.
Yeah,
we love
full throttle.
Yeah.
His name was Thich Nhat Hanh. And I heard him speak one time, and I share this as often as I possibly can with parents all around that come to me for support, that come to Family First. He said, the greatest gift you can give to your children is your own happiness. And he said, the reason is because they'll take responsibility for it. Now, my little add-on to the end of that is that the equal and opposite is also true. They'll take responsibility for your anxiety, your depression, your workaholism, your alcoholism, your marital issues. They'll take responsibility for all of it because they have to. They don't get to say, this just isn't working out for me anymore. I'm going to go get my needs met somewhere else. The only option that they have is to adapt to what's available to them rather than what it is that they need. So from my perspective, the greatest thing you could ever do for your kids is to identify and remove all of the obstacles in the way of your own happiness, your own fulfillment, your own, heart's desire, so to speak. That as you start to do that progressively more and more, your kids don't have to adapt to you and their environment in the same way. There's more capacity to be in relationship and in an authentic way. And you're able to model for them the fact that taking care of yourself is the greatest kind of thing that they can do to express their love for you.
And I give this example all the time. I remember we had a program director leave and go get another job. And so I took over our family program for a little bit, which we meet every Wednesday night. It's a support. I took over a family support group, and I showed up for like 3 or 4 weeks. And every week these families were so complimentary. Release is the best. I love my case manager. I love you guys. I'm like, I think we're good. I don't think we're this good. So the one that I went home and I looked at it and I looked at the list of parents and I matched them up with, the client or the patient. And sure enough, the parents that were showing up, their loved ones were having good experiences with us. That's right. It was an optional group. The parents that weren't showing up and weren't willing to dig in and do the work, their loved ones were not having good experiences.
Same deal at Family First. It was probably the one key element to the success of just like the beginning of our program when we were just working with a handful of kids and a handful of families. It was blatantly obvious. Yes. Oh my God, yeah. It was just a handful of us, and we were doing the best that we could with what we knew, but we were making so many mistakes, and the support of the families even from the beginning. We have families that there's a group. I ran this parent intensive a number of years ago, and there was a group of moms that really connected with each other on this during this intensive. And we talk a lot about survival patterns in this kind of trauma-focused treatment perspective. And so they started calling themselves survival moms. And there's this whole Facebook group that they created, Survival Moms. And it started with like 20, 30 moms, and it blew up.
Wow.
Blew up. And those same survival moms from years ago are still facilitating alumni support meetings. That's for incredible. Us over Zoom, with having touched thousands of parents over the years. I mean, it's just like the support from them, like this idea of like supporting somebody in awakening to themselves and the world, and that they feel compelled to share their experience and how they got there.
Well, there's so much humility in that. And I always say, I'll talk to a mom and I'll say, hey, we have this great support group, or I have this great free meeting that you can go to. No way. I'll pay $500 to go to see a therapist for an hour, so I know that anything I say in that room is going to stay there. But there's a great amount of humility and humbleness, however you want to define it, in doing something like that, being a beacon of hope for other moms, for other people going through it, and passing it on.
Yeah, I think that when it came to again, I keep going back to the beginning of like setting all this up. We didn't exactly know how. We just knew that we didn't want to be what so many of these kids had experienced. And we knew.
And I love that you say, by the way, that there are other programs doing good work. I mean, that's not.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
there's good therapists. One of the greatest therapists I ever met was at the program that I went to that was very tough. And it was a DOC program. Yeah. So there's all these incredible people, and then you mix in the fact that the treatment isn't therapy. therapy's a part of treatment, but like what you've created here with at Release, with the community and with the all of the different positions, the hierarchies, the different needs specialists and case managers and techs and counselor assistants and all of these different people that are just pouring into the client care on a daily basis. We hear it all the time, that the most meaningful interaction that a kid had during their stay, despite having, this badass therapist and quadruple board certified, Harvard trained psychiatrist and all that stuff, was the overnight tech that just like sat there one night when they were having insomnia, and they shared their experience with them and listened to them, and that was something that they had never experienced before and that they carried with them, and was like a little seed that planted that, oh wow, like there are people out in the world that want nothing from me and just want to see me succeed.
I mean, human beings are smart, and kids are really smart. Like if you bullshit a kid, they're going to eat you alive.
They will sniff out your agenda for them before you even know what it is.
So my thought there is like, okay, it's 2:00 in the morning. This guy, if I'm a kid, I know they're not making a great wage. They're here because their life circumstances are forcing them to work an overnight shift. I might want to listen to what they have to say.
Yeah.
Because there's no agenda here.
None.
There's no agenda. So you treat the whole family together. How long is the program? Is it typically, I mean, like it varies in length, obviously, like
varies
depending
in length,
on insurance.
We love to have kids there for 90 days.
And then you work
months.
really hard to get them into aftercare programs. And
exactly.
I mean, you've sent us kids. I mean, like we've had some amazing outcomes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My perspective is that the residential treatment is only as successful as the aftercare plan.
I mean, that's a great point, because how many times do you treat someone for 90 days, they, for whatever reason, have to go back home, and then parents immediately undo the work that you guys just did?
It's pretty tragic when it happens. Sometimes it ends up being a thing. We're fortunate in the sense that this is considered pretty early intervention on like a 14, 15-year-old. But when they go home, the family didn't take recommendations, and they see that it unfolded in the ways that we prepped them for and foreshadowed. And, similar to me, right? When everybody was telling me this, and this are going to happen if you continue living this way. And I didn't believe them. And then I went out and did it, and it all came true. It's like this thing of, how can you recommend what is going to be best for this kid and this family, and do it in a way that both is educational and in a way that doesn't shame the parents for making a decision that felt best to them in that moment. Because if they get the sense that I'm judging them for not taking the recommendation, the likelihood that they're going to seek us for support when things get bad again is pretty little. I learned that stuff from AA. Right. It's like 12-step recovery. It taught me like, I'm here for you when you need it. And, come back whenever you want to, whenever this feels like the right thing. I'm going to give you, guidance or advice or support when you ask for it, but I'm not going to be married to whether you take it or not.
I mean, and I know you've had this experience. I had one recently, actually. Cases will come into my life. I will do nothing but love them.
Yeah.
They will still call me every name in the book because they're not done. And I'll take it super personally, and I'll say, all I did was try to love that person.
Yeah.
And then 2 years later, they come crawling back like, they're either making an amends, like they're sober and they're like, holy shit, I was an asshole to you, or they're still struggling and they say, I'm ready now. Yeah. And that's really what validates this work, I think, and what you're talking about, because we are so used to living in crisis, and these parents come to us and they are in crisis. And it's really, I don't know how you feel about this, but I feel like my job to just be calm and confident they're going to feel that more than hear what I'm saying.
Yeah, and to validate, I have a hard time sometimes in our field. I feel conflicted about it, right? Because there's so much hope, and there's so much to be said for like the miracles that you and I've both seen, and there's also something to be said for not selling hope. That I feel conflicted sometimes around the idea that like more often than not the most supportive thing that we can do for families is to validate that this is very scary, that there is no right or wrong decision to make, that you could do this for your kid and absolutely nothing changes. And by being direct, by being straightforward about all of those things, it gives people the agency to kind of choose. And I think so many people are sensitive to some of the snake oil that kind of gets sold in places that it's important to inspire. It's important to show that there's another way and there's a path that's available to everybody. And yet when that becomes a way of ignoring kind of the darker side of all of this, it reinforces so much of the shame that keeps people from seeking support in the first place.
Yeah.
Something you said a moment ago reminded me of this kid I worked with a handful of years ago. I was so lost working with him. He was so angry, and he hated me. He just ripped me to shreds every time we talked. And I remember this vividly. One of the sessions that we had, he's ripping me apart. F you. You don't know me. I don't know you. I don't trust you. You could be just like everybody else that my parents have sent me off to be fixed by. And when I was working with him, I was, trying to show him like, no, like I'm not like those people. I am trustworthy. I don't think that you're broken in all the ways that you've been told you're broken, or that there's something wrong with you, or, anything like that. And as we're working together and I'm trying to point out like that I never said anything about him being broken, or I never said, these were all, I was trying to do the therapy thing.
Yeah.
Right? I was trying to show him the projections that he had and all this kind of stuff. Just pissed him off even more. He's, stormed out of the room, completely tore my head off. And I was exhausted and defeated. I'm sure he was exhausted and pissed off. And so I called a mentor of mine, and asked to have like an emergency consultation. And she goes, tell me what's going on. I told her about the kid, and kid from Boca, really nice family, straight A student, incredibly successful in athletics, but was like on a tear. Was sneaking out, stealing, smoking weed, drinking, breaking into cars, knucklehead. And so I'm telling her about him, and I'm telling her about the interaction that we just had. And she goes, okay, let's do like a little role play. You be him, and I'll show you how I might work with him. And so I was like, he was a little intense, you okay with that? And she was like, I can handle it. So I let her have it, right? I started screaming at her. I said, F you, you don't know me. You think I'm broken. I'm not broken. I don't trust you. You're just like everybody else that my parents have sent me off to be fixed by. And she's just kind of like empathically, like kind of nodding her head a little as I'm talking. And I kind of ran out of steam at some point. And as I ran out of steam, she looks at me and she goes, of course you don't trust me. Why would you trust me?
Right. Double down.
And I didn't know what to say in the role play, right? So I kind of shuddered and I was like, what do you mean? And she goes, Well, you're absolutely right. You don't know me at all. Like, I could totally be just like all of the other people that your parents have sent you off to be fixed by. There's no reason you would think otherwise.
Yeah.
And as she's saying this, I started to feel really sad. Like tears started to well up in my eyes just in the role play. And I was like, how did you do that? Like, what was that? What did you just do? And she goes, the first thing I'm listening for when I'm working with somebody is I'm listening for what I can agree with, not what I can fix or solve or address or confront. And everything that he said, I was in complete alignment with. Yeah, he doesn't know me. There's no reason for him to, it would be weird if he trusted me right now. And it hit me like a ton of bricks how I had fallen into this trap. And so I rushed back to the center, right? Asked him if we could meet. And he reluctantly said yes. We go into my office, and I just started the whole thing off by saying, hey, man, I've been thinking a lot about you. I've been thinking a lot about our last session, and I just wanted to tell you that I was wrong. You're absolutely right. There's no reason for you to trust me. You don't know me at all. You have every reason in the world to think that I'm just like everybody else that your parents have shipped you off to get fixed by. And I'm sorry that I didn't say that in the first place. Lo and behold, what ends up happening? A tear starts running down his face. First tear I'd seen in treatment with him thus far. And I asked him, I said, I noticed that there's tears coming to your eyes. What are you aware of? And he goes, I don't know. This feels really weird. And I said, when you say this feels weird, what's the this? And he goes, I don't know. I've just never had anybody talk to me the way that you just talked to me. And I said, when you say it feels weird, is it like weird good or weird bad? And he said, a little bit of both. And we started talking about what felt good about it, which was that he actually felt validated for the first time in his life. And the bad part about it was that there was something really scary for him about being validated. That while he always wanted this, it felt really vulnerable for people to actually see him and understand him. While he was really angry that people didn't see or understand him, he set it up for people to not do that because that level of intimacy and connection felt really, really scary.
So powerful, man. I just think about and that is always in this work, in this career. And when I talk, it's always about, can you hear them?
Yeah.
Can you actually hear what they're saying? And can you make them feel like they're not alone? I feel like that's a good place to end. We left a ton on the table, so we might have to go back for a round two. How do people, is it familyfirst.com? How do people find you, Mike? Because I think people are going to be really, is it?
Yeah. You can go on www.familyfirstas.com. You can find a ton of free resources, articles that I've written, podcasts, book recommendations. A quick shout out to a close colleague of mine that asked me to write the foreword to her new book. It's called The Parallel Process for all families, all parents that have a loved one, a teen or a young adult in treatment. The Parallel Process has been an amazing resource for 15 years for parents. And she asked me to write the foreword to the newest edition.
Amazing.
It actually came out yesterday.
Dude, that's awesome.
And yeah, incredibly cool. I highly recommend, if you're a parent and you want support, to seek that information on Instagram. It's at michael.giresi.
What a gift to have you here, man. You've helped so many people. We got a lot of work left to do, but I'm grateful we made this happen. I'm grateful for you.
I'm grateful for you too, man. I really appreciate that we've gotten to connect more deeply.
Yeah, it's been good. All right, that's it for today. Thank you.